The sun hung low over the military base, casting long shadows across the dusty road that led to the main gate. The air was thick with the sound of marching boots and shouted commands. It was another busy morning for the young soldiers. Drills, training, and orders filling the day like every other. Before we drive into video, please subscribe my channel then. Through the haze of heat and noise, a lone figure appeared on the road, an old man. He walked slowly, each step measured and steady. His boots were worn, his jacket faded, and his cap, once proudly green, had turned pale with time. In his hand he held nothing. No bag, no papers, only the quiet confidence of someone who didn't need to prove who he was. The soldiers at the gate noticed him first. "Hey, you see that?" One whispered to another, pointing toward the approaching man. "Who's he? Doesn't look like he belongs here." The old man came closer, his eyes scanning the base, like someone remembering every inch of it. When he reached the gate, one of the guards stepped forward. "Sir, this is a restricted military area," the young soldier said firmly. "You can't enter without permission." The old man stopped, smiled politely, and replied, "I know, son. I'm here to see your commander." The soldier blinked, unsure if he heard that right. "Our commander?" he asked. "You mean the Commander Blake?" The old man nodded slowly. "Yes, tell him an old friend came by." A few soldiers nearby started laughing. "Old friend? You sure about that, sir?" One said jokingly. "Commander Blake doesn't usually hang around with civilians." The old man looked down at his arm. His sleeve was rolled up halfway, and on his forearm, faintly visible, was a tattoo. Old, faded, almost erased by time. The ink looked like it once carried a symbol, something strong and proud, but now it was barely recognizable. One of the younger soldiers pointed at it. "Hey, what's that supposed to be?" he said, chuckling. "Looks like it's from the last war." The others laughed too. The old man didn't react. He simply looked past them, toward the open grounds inside the base. In his eyes there was something, not anger, not pride, but a quiet sadness, a memory that weighed heavier than words. He spoke softly. "You remind me of my first team. Always quick to laugh, never quick to listen." The laughter faded for a moment. The young soldiers exchanged awkward glances. The old man's voice carried a tone they didn't understand. Calm, but commanding, like someone used to giving orders. The guard at the gate straightened up a little. "Sir, maybe you should wait here. I'll check if the commander is available." The old man nodded. "Take your time, son. I'm not in a hurry. Haven't been in a long time." He stepped aside and leaned quietly against the fence. The soldiers nearby kept whispering, their curiosity growing. "Who is this guy?" one asked. "Maybe some retired vet trying to look important." "Yeah, probably just another old-timer with war stories." They didn't know how wrong they were. Inside the base, Commander Blake was finishing a briefing. He was known as one of the toughest, most respected officers in the Navy. His medals gleamed, his uniform spotless. His men admired him and feared him. As he walked out of the command tent, an aide approached quickly. "Sir, there's an older man outside the main gate asking for you." Blake frowned. "An old man?" "Yes, sir. Says he's an old friend." The commander paused. Something about that phrase stirred a memory deep in his mind. "Did he give a name?" "No, sir. Just said you'd remember him." Blake's expression changed. Curiosity mixed with a strange unease. "All right," he said. "Let's go see him." Back at the gate, the old man was still waiting quietly. The soldiers had lost interest for a moment, returning to their jokes, until one of them noticed a black SUV approaching from inside. "Uh-oh," one said. "Looks like the boss is coming." The laughter stopped. Everyone straightened up, brushing off their uniforms. Commander Blake stepped out of the vehicle, tall and sharp, his presence commanding respect instantly. The soldiers snapped to attention. "Commander on deck." Blake nodded once, then looked toward the old man, and in that instant, the noise, the laughter, the chatter, all of it faded. His eyes widened slightly. His steps slowed. For a moment, he looked like he'd seen a ghost. The soldiers noticed his expression. "Sir, is everything all right?" one asked. Blake didn't answer. He walked closer until he stood face to face with the old man. The silence between them was heavy. Then, in a voice quieter than usual, Blake asked, "Where did you get that tattoo?" The old man lifted his arm slowly. "You remember this mark, don't you?" The soldiers glanced at each other, confused. The tattoo, that faded, almost invisible mark, didn't seem special to them, but the commander's reaction said otherwise. Blake's eyes softened. I thought no one from that unit was still alive." The old man smiled faintly. "We never really die, son. We just fade, like ink on the skin." The soldiers were frozen, trying to make sense of what they were seeing. The commander took a deep breath. then slowly rolled up his own sleeve. And there, on his forearm, was the same tattoo, bold and clear. Gasps filled the air. The soldiers' faces changed from confusion to shock. The commander's tattoo was identical, the same symbol, the same design. Only his was newer, brighter, as if the old man's faded ink had been passed down to him. The commander looked at the old man with deep respect. "You were there," he said quietly. "You led them, didn't you?" The old man nodded. "A long time ago. You were just a recruit back then." Commander Blake straightened up and said loudly, "Attention!" The young soldiers instantly stood tall, but they didn't know why. The commander looked at his men and said, "You're standing in front of the man who trained the very unit that built this base, the man who saved my life when I was no older than you." Every soldier fell silent. The same men who had laughed minutes ago now looked down in shame. The old man simply smiled. "They're young, Commander. Let them laugh. That's what keeps them brave." Blake's voice broke slightly as he said, "It's good to see you again, sir." The old man nodded, eyes glistening. "It's good to be remembered." The camera lingers on their tattoos, one bright, one faded. Symbols of two generations, one legacy. The wind blows gently as the screen fades, leaving only the sound of distant marching and a single line appearing on screen. True heroes never fade, even if their tattoos do. The base was silent. Not even the wind dared to interrupt what had just happened. Every soldier stood frozen, eyes locked on the two men, the proud commander and the old stranger with the faded tattoo. The soldiers had stopped whispering, stopped laughing. A heavy feeling filled the air, something they couldn't explain. Commander Blake kept his eyes on the old man. "You shouldn't be here," he said softly, almost as if afraid that saying it louder would break the moment. The old man gave a faint smile. "And yet here I am." The commander took a slow breath. "After all these years, I thought you were gone. I thought everyone from Ghost Unit was gone." A murmur ran through the younger soldiers. Ghost Unit? The name alone sounded like something out of a secret legend. None of them had ever heard of it during training. The old man nodded, his expression unreadable. "We were ghosts long before they called us that." The commander's jaw tightened. He looked around at his men, their curious eyes waiting for answers. "At ease," he ordered, "but listen closely. You're about to hear something no history book will ever tell you." The soldiers relaxed slightly, but their attention stayed sharp. The tension in the air was thick, like a storm about to break. The commander turned back to the old man. "Tell me, sir, why now? After all this time?" The old man looked out toward the training fields, where young soldiers were still drilling in the distance. "I came to see if what we fought for still lives here," he said quietly, "and to see what became of the boy who once carried the ghost mark." The commander lowered his gaze for a moment, remembering. "That boy grew up because of you," the old man chuckled softly, though his eyes held sadness, "and he became a better man than I ever was." The soldiers shifted uneasily, their curiosity boiling over. One of them, the same guard who had mocked the tattoo earlier, couldn't help but ask, "Sir, what is Ghost Unit?" The commander looked at him, a long, silent look that made the young man's throat tighten. "You think training is hard?" the commander began. "You think your battles are rough? Ghost Unit went where others couldn't. Missions with no names, no medals, no glory, only silence." The old man's voice joined his. "We existed in the shadows. When things went wrong, when soldiers were trapped or forgotten, we were the ones who went in." Another soldier whispered, "But I've never heard of them." "That's the point," the commander said coldly. "You weren't supposed to." The young men exchanged nervous glances. The silence returned, filled now with awe and tension. The old man's faded tattoo caught the sunlight. The letters, though worn, seemed to shimmer faintly. It was more than a mark. It was a reminder of those who never returned. The commander's tone softened. "You trained me, sir. You taught me everything. I remember that day in the desert, when we were surrounded." The old man didn't respond at first. His eyes darkened, lost in the memory. "7 men went in," he said finally. "Only 2 came out." The soldiers leaned in, silent, sensing the weight behind his words. The commander nodded. "You carried me out when I couldn't move. You should have left me there." The old man looked up sharply. "We don't leave our own. That's not who we were. That's not who we are. That's not who we are." The words hit hard. The younger soldiers stood straighter without realizing it. The shame on their faces began to fade, replaced by respect. But the suspense wasn't over. The old man suddenly turned toward the commander. "Tell me, Blake, do they still carry the code?" The commander hesitated. "The code?" The old man's eyes narrowed. The code that defined Ghost Unit. The one we swore to never break. The commander didn't answer right away. He looked at his soldiers, then back at the old man. We follow orders. We protect our own. That's still the same. The old man shook his head. That's not the code. And you know it. The commander's voice grew low. You're asking about something that doesn't exist anymore. Then maybe that's why I came back, the old man said, his voice sharp now. To remind you. The soldiers looked between them, the atmosphere turning tense again. What were they talking about? What code? The old man took a step closer. His voice dropped to a near whisper. But every soldier could feel the power in it. Honor before orders. Always. The commander closed his eyes for a moment. The phrase hit him like a bullet from the past. He repeated it softly. Honor before orders. Then he looked up at the old man. You still live by it, don't you? The old man smiled faintly. It's the only reason I'm still alive. For a few seconds, no one spoke. The sound of the flag rustling in the wind was the only thing breaking the silence. Then one of the younger soldiers, voice trembling, said, Sir, were you part of Ghost Unit too? The commander nodded slowly. Yes, I was their youngest member. The soldier swallowed hard. And he was your leader? The commander's gaze softened. He wasn't just a leader. He was the man every soldier wanted to be. The old man turned away, his expression unreadable. That was a long time ago, son. A long time ago. But the commander stepped closer. Not long enough to forget. The old man's eyes met his again, full of something the soldiers couldn't define. Pain. Pride. Loss. Suddenly, a voice came crackling through the radio on the commander's belt. Sir, we have a situation at the eastern perimeter. Unauthorized signal detected. The commander looked at the old man instantly. The veteran's face turned serious. You still have intrusions this close to the base? The commander's tone shifted. All command mode now. Yes, we've been tracking unknown signals for a week. The old man's voice dropped low. That's no coincidence. They're looking for something. The commander frowned. For what? The old man looked down at his faded tattoo and whispered. For whoever's left. Every soldier felt a chill run down their spine. The commander ordered his men to prepare for alert, but before leaving, he turned to the old man. You're staying. I need answers. The old man nodded slowly. You'll get them, but not all answers bring peace. The soldiers rushed off, unsure what was happening, but one thing was certain. The stranger at the gate was no ordinary veteran. He carried with him secrets buried deep within the military's forgotten past. As the sun dipped behind the horizon, the camera focused on his faded tattoo once again, the symbol of Ghost Unit, and a single drop of sweat slid down his arm, like a tear for all who never came back. In the distance, an alarm began to sound. The suspense grew heavier. Something from the past had just been awakened. The alarm echoed through the base like a heartbeat of danger. Red lights flashed across the yard as soldiers rushed to their positions. The quiet morning that had once surrounded the old man was now filled with shouts, orders, and the heavy sound of boots hitting the ground. Commander Blake barked into his radio. Seal all gates! Lock down the perimeter! Nobody gets in or out! The young soldiers scrambled, confused and anxious. None of them knew what was really happening. All they knew was that something about the old man's arrival had brought chaos with it. The veteran stood still, his eyes fixed on the horizon. His calmness was strange, almost unsettling. While everyone panicked, he remained as steady as stone. Blake turned to him sharply. You know something. Who are they? What are they looking for? The old man looked at him quietly, the corners of his mouth tightening. You still think every threat comes from outside these walls, don't you? Blake frowned. What's that supposed to mean? The veteran took a deep breath and stepped closer. His voice dropped to a whisper, but the tension in his tone made every word cut like glass. They're not after your weapons, Commander. They're after what's buried beneath this base. The commander froze. Beneath the base? The veteran nodded. Ghost Unit built this place long before it became what it is today. We created tunnels, safe houses, secret storage for files and codes no one was supposed to find. Blake's eyes widened. Codes? You mean classified intelligence? The old man's expression darkened. Worse. The names of every soldier who was ever part of Ghost Unit. A heavy silence followed. The commander turned away, running his hand through his hair. Those records were destroyed years ago. The Ghost Unit was erased from existence. The old man's voice grew heavy. Erased from paper, yes, but not from memory. And someone out there still remembers us. Someone who wants to finish what they started. The commander stared at him. Who? The old man's eyes flickered with pain. The ones we never caught. The mercenaries from Operation Iron Shadow. Blake stiffened at the name. He had heard it once. during his early days as a recruit. A secret mission whispered in fear, but he never knew it was real. "You mean the mission that went dark in the valley?" he asked. The old man nodded slowly. "Dark for you. Hell for us." A loud explosion suddenly shook the ground. Dust rained from the rooftops as the base sirens screamed louder. "Contact! Contact on the east side," a voice shouted through the radio. Blake's instincts kicked in. "All units, defensive positions. Move, move, move!" Soldiers ran past, their faces filled with panic and confusion. But the old man didn't flinch. He turned his head slightly, his voice calm as ever. "They've found one of the tunnels." Blake spun toward him. "How do you know that?" The old man's gaze stayed on the smoke rising in the distance. "Because I built it." The commander's eyes hardened. "You're coming with me." Without another word, he motioned for 2 soldiers to follow. The old man grabbed his cane, though it looked more like a walking stick than a weapon, and followed them through the dust-filled corridors. They entered an old bunker, one that hadn't been used in years. The walls were covered in rust, and the air smelled of earth and oil. The old man stopped near a steel door that was half buried under debris. He ran his hand across the cold metal. "This is where it begins." Blake nodded to one of the soldiers. "Get this open!" The door creaked loudly as it swung open, revealing a dark tunnel stretching into the unknown. Old pipes lined the walls, and faint markings glowed under the flashlight. The old man whispered, "The mark of the ghosts." The commander shined his light on the wall. And there it was, the same faded tattoo symbol, carved deep into the metal. "Why would you mark it here?" Blake asked. The old man replied, "So no one but us could find it." They moved deeper into the tunnel. The air grew colder, and the walls seemed to close in. The sound of distant rumbling made every step more tense. After several minutes, they reached a small underground room. Inside were metal lockers, rusted crates, and an old table with a thick folder resting on it. The commander opened it. Inside were yellowed papers, black and white photos, and names written in faded ink. "Ghost Unit, 1989, he read aloud. He looked at the old man. "This is your team." The veteran's eyes softened. "My family." He reached out and touched one of the photos. A group of soldiers smiling beside a helicopter. They never made it back, but their names must not die. Before Blake could respond, his radio crackled again. "Commander, unknown hostiles are breaching the east tunnel. They're heading underground." Blake's eyes shot toward the tunnel entrance. "They're coming here." The old man didn't move. "Then we don't run. Not this time." The sound of footsteps echoed down the tunnel. Heavy, deliberate, getting closer. Shadows flickered against the wall as flashlights moved through the darkness. Blake pulled his pistol. "We'll hold them off here," the old man smiled faintly. "You always did like fighting outnumbered." Blake gave him a quick look. "You sure you can still handle a fight, old man?" The veteran slowly reached down, twisted the top of his cane, and pulled out a hidden blade. "I didn't come back here to die quietly." The commander grinned despite the tension. "Then let's make them regret showing up." The footsteps grew louder. The tunnel lights flickered. Then, silence for a moment. It felt like the world stopped. Then gunfire exploded. Bullets struck the walls, echoing through the narrow tunnel. The commander and his men fired back, taking cover behind metal crates. The old man moved with surprising speed, ducking low and striking one of the intruders who broke through the smoke. The blade flashed, swift and silent. The commander called out, "We can't hold this position for long." The veteran shouted back, "We're not supposed to. We just need to buy time." "Time for what?" Blake asked, reloading. The old man pointed to a small sealed vault at the corner of the room. "Time to destroy that." Blake's eyes widened. "That contains all Ghost Unit records." The old man nodded. "Exactly. That's what they came for." "Exactly. That's what they came for." Bullets whizzed by as Blake crawled to the vault. He found an old explosive pack inside one of the crates, a leftover from training drills. He set the timer for 30 seconds. "Once I trigger this, there's no turning back." The old man looked at him firmly. "That's the only way to keep them from erasing us again." The commander pressed the switch. A sharp beep echoed through the tunnel. "Time to go!" Blake shouted. They ran toward the exit, the tunnel shaking behind them. Smoke filled the air as the explosion ripped through the underground chamber. The ground trembled. Dust and debris rained down. The soldiers at the surface saw smoke rising through cracks in the ground. The commander and the old man stumbled out of the tunnel, coughing but alive. The base lights flickered, alarms still blaring. Blake looked back. The vault was gone, along with every secret of Ghost Unit. The old man stood beside him, breathing heavily. "Now they'll never find what they came for." The commander nodded slowly, his voice low. "But they'll come back. The old man looked toward the dark sky. I know. And next time, they won't just be looking for files. The screen fades slowly as the sound of distant helicopters fills the air. The storm is far from over. The air around the base was heavy, thick with silence after the revelation. Every soldier stood frozen, their earlier laughter long gone, replaced by guilt and awe. The commander, still standing before the old soldier, took a slow breath. His voice trembled slightly, filled with respect and emotion. I never thought I'd see you again. Sir, he said quietly. The old man smiled. The kind of smile that carried years of pain, pride, and peace all at once. Didn't think I'd come back either, son. But something told me it was time. The young soldiers watched, their faces pale. The commander's words still echoed in their minds. This was not just any veteran. This was the man who had once saved their commander's life. The commander looked at the faded tattoo on the old man's arm again. That mark, he said softly, was the symbol of the Ghost Unit. There were stories about them. Impossible missions, no records, no medals, no names. Just men who vanished after victory, the old man chuckled. Stories, yes, but every story hides truth somewhere beneath it. He glanced at the sky. We were told to disappear when it was over, so we did. One young soldier, trembling slightly, stepped forward. Sir, he said, voice cracking, we're sorry. We didn't know. The old man looked at him, his eyes kind. You're young. You couldn't have known. But remember something, son. The people who make history rarely speak about it. They carry it silently. The base grew quieter still. Even the wind seemed to pause, as if listening. The commander finally spoke again. You once told me, sir, that a real soldier doesn't fight for medals or fame. He fights for the man beside him. The old man nodded. And that's still true. Always will be. The commander took a step back and turned toward his men. His voice grew firm and clear. A leader addressing his soldiers, but also teaching them a lesson they'd never forget. Listen carefully, he said. Today you laughed at something you didn't understand. You judged a man by his age and his faded tattoo. But that tattoo carries more honor than all our medals combined. That man, he pointed at the old soldier, fought battles none of us could imagine. He carried the weight of men who never came home. The soldiers stood at attention, eyes lowered, ashamed. The old man raised a trembling hand. It's all right, Commander. Let them learn. That's how the next generation grows stronger. A soft breeze moved through the camp, lifting dust and memories into the air. The commander straightened his posture and gave a sharp order, his voice echoing across the training ground. Company, attention! Every soldier immediately snapped to position, boots hitting the ground in perfect unison. The old man looked surprised. What are you doing? The commander's eyes were steady, giving respect where it's due. He raised his right hand to his forehead, a crisp, perfect salute. Present arms! He shouted. Dozens of rifles lifted in synchronized motion. Every soldier saluted the old man, the same man they had laughed at only an hour before. For a long moment, no one moved. The sun was setting behind them, painting the base in shades of gold and crimson. The light touched the old man's faded tattoo, making it shine faintly, as if glowing from within. Tears filled the old soldier's eyes. He slowly returned the salute. Thank you, he whispered, voice barely audible. You honor not just me, but all those who never came back. The commander took a step closer, his voice firm but full of warmth. You're home now, sir. You always were. The old man nodded, his eyes glistening. Home, he repeated softly. The camera moved slowly, capturing the two men standing side by side. One old, one young, united by the same tattoo, the same honor, the same unspoken bond. The music rises, gentle and emotional. The commander lowers his salute and says quietly to his men, remember this moment. One day, when your hair turns gray and your tattoos fade, may someone salute you the same way. The old man gives a final smile. Then I'll rest easy, knowing the spirit of the Ghost Unit still lives on. As he turns to leave, the soldiers step aside, creating a path for him. He walks slowly toward the gate, the golden light following him. The commander watches until he disappears into the distance. The screen fades to black, and white letters appear. Heroes never fade, even when their stories do. Veterans, honor stories. Honor stories.